Good evening, it's Monday the 24th of March and here's what's making news around the world on World News Tonight. Papal homecoming. Pope Francis returns to Vatican after 5 weeks in hospital recovering from his illness. Election countdown. Canada's Prime Minister calls snap poll amid rising tensions with the USA. Global glow off. Iconic landmarks dim lights in solidarity for Earth Hour movement.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Aquil Qureshi.
Good evening once again. Pope Francis has returned to the Vatican after a 5-week stay in Rome's Gemelli Hospital, where he has retreated double pneumonia and other complications. Doctors have prescribed 2 months of rest, advising against large gatherings during his recovery.
Pope Francis returned to the Vatican on Sunday after surviving a 5-week battle in hospital against double pneumonia. It was the most serious health crisis of his 12-year papacy. Shortly before leaving Rome's Gemelli Hospital, he made his first public appearance from a balcony at the facility, while emotional well-wishers cheered from below. A car carrying the pontiff was accompanied by police vehicles through Rome. It made a short detour for him to bring flowers to the Basilica of St. Mary Major, a church to which Francis has a special devotion and visits frequently. During Pope Francis's appearance, he thanked Carmela Vittoria Mancuso, who arrived every morning during his hospitalisation with yellow flowers. Mancuso, who had prayed for him nightly, expressed her relief.
Happy, joyful, I don't know. My heart was bursting. I didn't think I would feel this way.
Under medical orders of rest, it's unclear how much activity Francis will undertake in the coming months.
Ukrainian officials met with the USA technical team in Saudi Arabia 1 day before scheduled the US talk in Russia. The discussions aim to address partial ceasefire agreements and de-escalating ongoing conflicts in the region.
Diplomacy in Saudi Arabia between Ukrainian and US officials in technical level talks to continue a process towards a partial ceasefire and some kind of peace settlement for Ukraine. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says his team is working constructively. He's urging allies to put pressure on Russia to end the war.
It is clear to absolutely everyone in the world that Russia is the only one who is dragging this war out. The only one who brought it here and who needs to continue it.
Remember the hug.
Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff, speaking on American television, expressed optimism about President Vladimir Putin's intentions ahead of Monday's talks in Saudi Arabia between US and Russian officials. Witkoff played down concerns among Washington's European NATO allies that Putin might be emboldened by any peace deal in Ukraine to invade other neighbors.
I just don't see that he wants to take all of Europe. This is a much different situation than it was in World War II. In World War II, there was no NATO. So you have countries that are armed there. To me, it just does. I take him at his word in this sense.
President Trump has spoken to both leaders.
White House National Security Advisor Mike Waltz is saying the U.S. is talking through a range of confidence-building measures aimed at ending the war, including on the future of Ukrainian children taken into Russia. Bloomberg News, meanwhile, is reporting that the Trump administration is targeting a truce agreement by the 20th of April. That's less than a month away.
Top diplomats from South Korea, Japan and China have agreed to collaborate towards maintaining peace on the Korean peninsula. Meeting in Tokyo, the foreign ministers emphasized their shared responsibility in promoting regional stability amid global uncertainties.
South Korea's Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol sat down for talks with his Japanese and Chinese counterparts in Tokyo as the three countries seek to boost cooperation for regional peace amid geopolitical uncertainties. This is the first time that they've met since November 2023. In a press conference following the meeting that took place in Tokyo on Saturday, Cho said that they've agreed that it's in the three countries' common interest to maintain security on the Korean peninsula. He also added that they addressed the issue of illegal cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi described the current situation on the Korean Peninsula as complex and sensitive, while adding that all parties must meet each other halfway and show goodwill. On economic issues, he said the three countries are looking to push forward with regional economic integration, including the resumption of a free trade agreement.
The three parties are maintaining communication on restarting the negotiations on the free trade agreement and strive to resume them as soon as possible.
The three officials also agreed to speed up efforts to hold a summit between their leaders as soon as possible, at a mutually convenient date.
In Istanbul, protesters clashed with police following the arrest of the mayor on corruption charges. Demonstrators view the detention as politically motivated, leading to mass protest and international concern over Turkey's democratic processes.
Protesters took to the streets for a fifth night in Istanbul on Sunday after a Turkish court jailed Istanbul mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu, pending trial on corruption charges. The court's decision to send İmamoğlu to jail came after the main opposition party, European leaders, and thousands of protesters criticized the actions against him as politicized and undemocratic. İmamoğlu, President Tayyip Erdogan's main political rival, has denied the charges he faces as unimaginable accusations and slander. The government denies that investigations are politically motivated and says courts are independent. The mayor's troubles appear to be galvanizing opposition against Erdogan's government, which has run Turkey for 22 years. Police used pepper spray, tear gas, and water cannons to disperse crowds in what has become the country's biggest protest in more than a decade. Protesters wore masks and used umbrellas and cardboard to shield themselves from police. The same day, nearly 15 million Republican People's Party members and non-members streamed into polling stations nationwide to either elect or endorse İmamoğlu as its candidate in a future presidential vote, the party said. The court said İmamoğlu and at least 20 others were jailed as part of a corruption investigation. One of two opened against the two-term mayor last week.
Let's take a short commercial break. More world news on the other side. Welcome back. Billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk has held a top-level meeting at the Pentagon discussing potential collaborations and addressing concerns over leaks within the Department of Defense.
Billionaire Elon Musk held an unprecedented top-level meeting at the Pentagon on Friday and called for the prosecution of any Defense Department officials who leak, quote, maliciously false information about his visit. The 80-minute meeting with U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth came after the New York Times reported that Musk would be briefed on secret war plans for China, something Musk and President Donald Trump both denied. At the White House, after the meeting with Musk, Hegseth addressed the report.
We welcomed him today to the Pentagon to talk about DOGE, to talk about efficiencies, to talk about innovations. It was a great informal conversation. The rest of that reporting was fake. There was no war plans. There was no Chinese war plans. There was no secret plans. That's not what we were doing at the Pentagon.
Trump also refuted the report.
I don't want to show that to anybody, but certainly you wouldn't show it to a businessman who is helping us so much. You know, Elon has businesses in China.
Access to a closely guarded military plan would mark a sharp expansion of Musk's role as the Trump advisor who is spearheading efforts to cut U.S. government spending. Musk has several contracts with the Pentagon, and the opportunities for his companies under Trump could drive billions of dollars of revenue to them, including SpaceX. The White House has previously said Musk will recuse himself if any conflicts of interest arise between his business dealings and his role in cutting federal government spending. Later, in a letter to Hegseth, Democratic Senators Elizabeth Warren and Tammy Duckworth demanded details on what information was shared with Musk in the Pentagon meeting and why.
Dangerous wildfires have prompted evacuations in North and South Carolina, with blaze consuming thousands of acres. In New Jersey, firefighters are battling a wildfire in Vorton State Forest, highlighting the widespread impact of these fires across several states.
Tonight, a state of emergency as wildfires rip through one of South Carolina's most popular state parks. Choppers dropping water at Table Rock State Park in the state's northwestern region. The flames already burning at least 1,000 acres and nowhere near contained. Fire alerts are in place from Nebraska to North Carolina. Outside Asheville, crews are battling 3 separate fires, with mandatory evacuations issued for some residents. Meanwhile, at a state forest in southern New Jersey, the firefight continues, the flames eating through more than 2,000 acres. A weekend of wild weather, refusing to let go.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has called a snap election for April 28, citing aggressive action from the USA President Donald Trump, including tariffs and threats to annex Canada.
New Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney on Sunday called a snap election for April 28th, saying he needed a strong mandate to deal with the threat posed by U.S. President Donald Trump.
We are facing the most significant crisis of our lifetimes because of President Trump's unjustified trade actions and his threats to our sovereignty.
The comments are a sign of how relations between the two longtime allies and major trading partners have deteriorated. Trump has imposed tariffs on Canadian goods and threatened to annex it as its 51st state.
He wants to break us so America can own us. We will not let that happen. We're over the shock of the betrayal, but we should never forget the lessons.
The White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment on Carney's remarks. Carney, who was sworn in on March 14th, captured the Liberal leadership by persuading party members he was the best person to tackle Trump. The next election was not due until October, but Carney's hoping to capitalize on his party's remarkable recovery in the polls since January. It follows former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's resignation as well as Trump's threats. Earlier this month, Trump delayed a broad 25% tariff on some Canadian goods for 30 days. He has since imposed tariffs on steel and aluminum imports and threatened reciprocal tariffs on additional goods, including Canadian dairy and lumber, starting April 2nd. Canadians are rallying for their country and seeing a resurgence in nationalism.
And when we are attacked, we stand together.
On Saturday, residents gathered in Toronto to denounce U.S. tariffs. Canada-U.S. relations top the list of issues preoccupying residents, according to recent polls. Carney, a former 2-time central banker with no previous political or election campaign experience, now has 5 weeks to win over Canadians. On Sunday, Carney proposed cutting the lowest income tax bracket by 1 percentage point. Polls suggest the Liberals, who have been in power since 2015, have slightly pulled ahead of the official opposition Conservatives, who had led earlier in the year. The Conservatives have sought to portray Carney as an elitist, who plans to continue the Trudeau-era policy of high government spending.
Israel conducted airstrikes in southern Lebanon in response to rocket attacks, resulting in casualties and raising concerns over the fragility of the current ceasefire with Hezbollah.
This footage, released by the Israeli military, shows a new wave of airstrikes across South Lebanon, in what's the heaviest eruption of violence since its ceasefire with Hezbollah began nearly 4 months ago. According to the Israeli army, it hit dozens of rocket launchers and a Hezbollah command center, and that the strikes are retaliation for Hezbollah's rocket fire towards Israel on Saturday, something the Iran-backed militant group denies, saying it was committed to the truce that ended over a year of conflict. The Lebanese government, though, already fears escalation.
This could lead the country into a new war, with disastrous consequences for Lebanon.
The Lebanese military, which is investigating the incident, said it had dismantled 3 primitive rocket launchers on its southern soil, and that it's attempting to regain control over Hezbollah on its border with Israel. Despite tensions heightening, the Israeli Prime Minister's foreign policy advisor says he expects Lebanon to uphold its end of the shaky truce. The escalation has increased fears that the fragile ceasefire, brokered by the US and France, would not hold, particularly as Israel restarted military operations in Gaza. UNIFIL, the UN peacekeeping force in Lebanon, has stated it's alarmed by the new cross-border violence, calling on all parties to uphold their commitments to avoid serious consequences in the region.
In Sudan, the army has recaptured the presidential palace and central bank in Khartoum, marking significant gains in the ongoing civil war. Despite these developments, the humanitarian crisis worsens with widespread displacement and famine affecting civilians.
At this donation center in Sudan's second-largest city, Omdurman, people continue to line up day after day for a crucial meal. Many volunteers assist here daily. Just a few blocks away, fierce fighting rages between the army and a powerful paramilitary group.
We've remained here since the start of the war and haven't left despite all the circumstances.
The conflict in Sudan, pitting Sudan's army against the rapid support forces, has triggered a massive humanitarian crisis. The UN reports that over 2/3 of the population now need healthcare, food or other emergency aid. UNICEF says 3.3 million children are at risk of severe malnutrition. Already, 12 million people have been displaced by the civil war, and the latest developments have forced even more people to move, bringing even greater challenges for already pressured aid organizations. On Friday, Sudan's army recaptured the presidential palace in Khartoum from the paramilitary forces as part of a bigger counter-offensive in central Sudan.
Let's take a short commercial break. More world news on the other side. Welcome back. Iconic landmarks worldwide, including the Eiffel Tower and Sydney Opera House, went dark to mark Earth Hour, a global initiative raising awareness about climate change and energy consumption.
On Saturday, the Earth Hour campaign united millions globally in a symbolic action against climate change. From 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. local time, iconic landmarks dimmed their lights to raise environmental awareness. In New York City, the Empire State Building's tower lights were turned off. In Sydney, the sails of the Opera House went dark. Rio de Janeiro's iconic Christ the Redeemer statue in Brazil and landmarks in Hong Kong and Tokyo also switched off their lights. Organized by the World Wildlife Fund, Earth Hour 2025 saw participation from over 180 countries and territories.
In North Hollywood, a woman was joyfully reunited with her French bulldog, Havoc, who had been missing for 2 years. The emotional reunion highlights the enduring bond between pets and their owners and the power of community efforts in locating lost animals. Take a look.
Heartbreak after this adorable Frenchie was stolen. Yasmine Hazard calls it her worst nightmare after her little guy was snatched after wandering away from her Los Angeles home more than 2 years ago. Yasmine became laser focused on finding her Frenchie, adorably named Havoc. She enlisted bloodhounds in the search and pleaded on social media for help. Somebody must have taken Havoc. After all, French bulldogs are the #1 target for dog nappings. Just ask Lady Gaga, whose 2 Frenchies were stolen from her dog walker in 2021. After 2 years, she'd just about given up hope of ever seeing her beloved dog again. But then she got a phone call that, incredibly, her Frenchie was safe. Apparently, Havoc ran away from his dog nappers. He was found 100 miles away, wandering the streets from North Hollywood to Apple Valley. A Good Samaritan took the dog to an animal shelter that recognized the Frenchie from social media. A microchip confirmed Havoc's identity. And here's the moment she reunites with Havoc. The Frenchie runs right into her arms. After 2 long years, he still remembers his owner.
He remembers you. You're home, Abby. You're home.
A Utah high school student recreated the iconic scene from 10 Things I Hate About You, serenading his prospective prom date with Can't Take My Eyes Off You while descending the bleachers. Take a look.
She was just brought out to her high school's football field. Suddenly, this happens.
You're just too good to be true.
A guy starts singing the Frankie Valli hit, Can't Take My Eyes Off of You. As he makes his way down the bleachers in Utah, it looks like he's being chased by security. It's an elaborate promposal. Look familiar? It's a recreation of the classic Heath Ledger scene from the 90s rom-com 10 Things I Hate About You. Now, the big question.
Are you going to prom with me? Yes!
Well, that's a wrap right here on World News Tonight. Stay tuned as we'll be shortly back with Nightly Business Report, reported to you live on Other Than 24 with Vinod Varanasuria, and leaving you with the visuals of Jean Dufay, Art Brut, being featured at the NYC Pace Gallery exhibition. Thank you for watching. Good night.